Elden Ring DS3 Boss LARP is a challenge I devised for myself to stress test the game's systems. It is this FromSoft entry's equivalent to my DS3 weapon percent run. That former structure, beating the game with every weapon type, would not suit exploration of Elden Ring's content. The extrapolated combat, though built off 3's design, is less dependent on a lean pool of potential options at the player's disposal. Instead, the game expects you to use its massive selection of items, their bespoke applications, to overcome each, sometimes steep, obstacle. There are differences between weapon classes, yes, yet those variations don't have as significant an effect on moment-to-moment gameplay as other mechanics do. Thus, just doing weapon percent in Elden Ring would not adequately engage with those more relevant mechanics, and as a result, despite the massive time investment of completing 40 runs, you would not adequately stress test the game. To briefly go into specific examples, the choices of attack at a player's disposal for a given opening in Elden Ring are numerous, contrasting Dark Souls 3's dominant R1. Nuance is found in that light attack still, but a player won't get as much mileage out of it, with new and returning options being often superior. Running heavies and power stancing make a dynamic resurgence, while refreshed jump attacks are an even more committal option. Windows of opportunity often aren't large enough for 2 R1s, evoking new behavior out of players. Use one of these other options instead, get more out of your counter, avoid entrapment in lengthy, light combos. Plus, expanded poise damage mechanics and access to better damage types, like Pierce, give further credence to exploring other types of actions. Now consider 2 more factors, magic and skills. Gone are hybrid catalysts, effectively. If one were to stick to only one weapon class, spells would become nearly obsolete. I guess I could have run each school separately, do like 50 runs, but that too would be too narrow to explore mechanics properly. Again, not worth the time investment. A large subsect of Elden Ring's content goes unutilized in the weapon percent framing, and the spells actually seen are likely to be the few dominant choices. Which segues me into the second point, skills. The Ash of War system is pretty neat, adding tons of extra options to each class. And I mean each class. Sure, thrusting weapons are overrepresented and striking weapons under, but regardless there's extensive overlap. Look no further than the weapon buffs, nearly all classes can use them, and the flat AR boost makes them hard to overlook, especially since you can swap any time to suit the current target's resistances. Weapon percent would devolve into Mist, Lightning Slash, Sacred Blade, Flaming Strike spam. Or, since skills like Lion's Claw and Impaling Thrust do absurd AR and stance damage, most classes would resort to spamming those skills, buffing with resin. There may be 40 runs, but in praxis there'd be only like a half a dozen unique builds. Considering this background, which should give me a good excuse to use that Grimace Katana footage, a new framing was warranted. So I concocted DS3 Boss LARP. Pretty self-explanatory, though I'll elaborate anyway. Beat the game using builds based on Dark Souls 3's bosses. I reference the fights as they appear in that game, and choose equipment serving as believable analog. Being that these 2 games are in the same series, finding comparable items is feasible, though some artistic liberties were taken, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes for humor. Weapons, armor, and spells are expressly restricted, while talismans see less regulation. None are off the table per se, but if a particular one fits the lore of a boss being imitated, I'm required to wear it. For instance, Gundyr's soul can be transposed into the Prisoner's Chain, whose effect is near identical to Radagon's Source Seal. As such, that talisman is required to be worn at all times, for lore. On that subject, all builds will be constructed in a manner that avoids repetition. If possible, no equipment will be shared between runs, unless there is a lore-relevant reason to do so. Referring to Gundyr again, I'm doing Iudex and Champs separately. Since it's the same dude, much of the equipment will be shared. A less egregious example, Dancer and Vort will both be shackled by the Rotten Wingsword insignia and Godskin Swaddling Cloth, as they feature the same effect as the Pontiff Eye Rings. Their initial armor too will be the same, cause they both start off as similar Outrider Knights. With me so far? Cool, we're almost done. Resistances are taken into account, namely with statuses. If a boss can't be poisoned in DS3, like Iudex Gundyr, I cannot get poisoned during progression in this Elden Ring run. For the sake of convenience and to prevent tedium, this rule is optional during resource gathering. So like when Greatwood traveled through Seethwater Cave to get the mushroom set, that's fine, but getting poisoned in Rot Lake requires a reset, as that area is the only way to reach a required boss, Estelle. And say if you get bled by Moog, that's a reset. In terms of what required content is, refer to my Elden Ring progression guide. This document serves as regulation for each run's pacing to avoid over-leveling. Though, since I intend to grab as much available gear prior to progressing, I'll likely overpower many of the bosses in the first 2 breakpoints, owing to high rune level. Not much to be done about that. Back to statuses, if a boss simply has a high resistance but no immunity, relevant horn talismans must be used to counter said status. Inversely, if a boss doesn't possess a resistance, or if they are outright weak to a status, no means of mitigation may be taken. Iudex Gundyr resists bleed and is neutral to frost. I raise robustness for Moog, I take stalwart horn off for Nile. Another fast and loose rule, I'll keep it in mind while playing, but if I forget it's not a big deal. Immunity is a big deal. I still won't guarantee I'll never fail RP by mistake over the course of this series. One final note, for statuses with no equivalent in Dark Souls 3, such as Sleep and Madness, I'll refer to context clues. Those 2 basically only affect NPC bosses, so all but Half-Light and Gravetender are immune. I guess you could also rationalize Frida or Watchers being vulnerable to sleep, like the humanoid godskins are. However, if you instead view them like Melania, who simply shakes off sleep, it'd effectively be an immunity. Finally, intermediate gear is allowed until proper attire is attained. Bosses will be played as they become available in DS3's progression, and I'll try to go for lore-relevant endings. Pontiff's Age of the Deep seems most similar to Ronnie's Age of the Stars, so he and the bosses tied to his sect will aim for this resolution outside of the established order. Okay, just one more thing before we start. The challenge has been explained, now to cover how the runs will be documented. Unlike DS3 Weapon Percent, and as you've likely already observed, each section shall get a standalone video, later to be compiled into one large upload. From the looks of things, a complete Elden Ring playthrough by my standards takes about 20 hours, 4 times as long as my DS3 average. Putting aside writing and editing, playing the game alone would greatly balloon production time. I could easily cut the highlight out of my process, but then I'd need to produce every entry directly after playing, and if the video's already done, just upload it. I've already done the novel act of dumping it all at once, no need to repeat the trick. And frankly, 3 years on a single project was kinda already too much. I want to tackle this piecemeal. There you have it. Elden Ring DS3 Boss Lore explained. I won't be repeating this every video because then I need to cut those sections out of the final compilation, and frankly I can't be bothered to render these videos out twice. If you were redirected to this upload to learn about the challenge, you may now go back to whatever future video you came from. As for those of you here for our first boss, stick around as we get this show on the road. Well, kinda. I swear, this is the last point of context. I intend to structure this series like DS3 Weapon Percent, general overview, not play-by-play coverage per se, probably averaging 15 to 30 minutes in length. Digestible. Unfortunately, I'm gonna need time to figure out my production process here, and I sorta finished these first 2 bosses already some weeks ago. I didn't take notes. Needless to say, my memory's already faded, so my recounting may not be specific and or accurate, orderly. This first stretch of runs, not dissimilar to the first stretch of classes in DS3, will be a bit experimental as I dial everything in. I'm probably the only one who cares about this. I'm bitterly aware of all the juicy details I'll regret not including some years down the line, but what can you do? Highlighting to relive each playthrough just isn't time effective. I gotta make sacrifices somewhere. Hopefully this won't negatively impact the finished product too harshly, but if I sweat every detail, these videos will never get done. Thus, I am simply sending this shit and moving on. On to our first run! For real this time. Iudex Gundyr, called up from death only to be met by a vacant shrine, left to judge future contenders. Over time, the abyss festered within, rotting him inside out. In the modern day, a once fearsome champion is weak and sluggish, and eventually overcome by the pus of man. Channeling this idea, I modeled my character off Phase 2, an amorphous serpentine mass with piercing red eyes. Not that you'll see much of it. As will be the case most runs, the available armor will cover up any work done in the creator, so I don't intend to put much work into sculpting. Like right now, as found right at the start of the game, Bernal's Beast Champion set suits Gundyr. The layered plates resemble the individual segments of Gundyr's armor, as do the decorative medals and skirt. Though the gold trim is a bit off topic, Gundyr's durable gear, meant to weather the ages, can hardly be considered glitzy and gilded. Regardless, those highlights will match my final helmet. In the meantime, a specific merchant in Caelid sells a good piece in the interim. Gundyr's helm is meant to depict a crowned head, but no mask quite does that in Elden Ring, so instead I went off the overall cylindrical shape and laid it on the great helm. Looks pretty slick if I do say so myself. It also makes me very fat. Now, this wouldn't be an issue if I'd remembered to grab the prisoner's chain first, but oh well, I guess I'll just fat roll through pest threads. Solid stance damage from my starting class's halberd led charged R2s to easily net staggers. I could comfortably 1v1. Of course, that's if I could get a pest on its own. These ruins are crowded, the dogs are a menace. Thankfully, it didn't take long for one to drop. The pest glaive is about the only halberd which looks like Gundyr's. Probably because his halberd looks more like a bardiche. Being made of one solid material, lacking a beak, yet having the pole extend up the spine of the blade, really only the pestglaive fits, despite it being made of organic material and not cast iron. Though what is fitting is its boost to elemental resistances. Gundyr was meant to last the ages, this weapon aids in that effort. Not too pleased about the moveset though. For some ungodly reason the jump attacks are all horizontal, and the only thrust is found on the running attack. Two-handing doesn't help, not that it's legal. If you look closely, Gundyr never uses both hands. His raised charge sweep only sees his offhand align the swing. He keeps that hand free for fisticuffs, a lightweight sidearm to fend off close-range targets. Wish I could make the standard unarmed flailing punch deal usable damage, but alas, this isn't Best Souls 2, just stupid Elden Ring. Let's get creative. His armor is meant to be cast iron covering his body. All we need is a fist weapon fitting this description. Sounds like a good use of Boggart's iron ball. A little bulky, but it'll do. In case you were wondering, I'm saving the dry leaf arts for Champ. Those dexterous moves fit a warrior in his prime. Now what to do about absent thrusts? Repeated thrusts, or really any thrusting Ash of War, could work. There's also the matter of his jumping plunge. Storm Assault sounds good, though it was rarely seen outside its niche of killing birds. The second part of the aforementioned strike, the launched stones, was a tricky one. For a bit there I legalized Cragblade, as when you pull the weapon out of the ground, it causes an AoE, like the move we're imitating. A flimsy excuse to use a strong weapon buff. If you don't agree, don't worry, it barely saw use past the first few hours because Impaling Thrust is simply too good to pass up. Not only is it the closest skill to Gundyr's thrusting kit, it's also very practical. Quick with minimal end lag, fantastic reach, crazy high motion value, and vicious stance damage. Genuinely OP in the running for the strongest attack in Elden Ring as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, the chopping halberd could be better, but Gundyr's first phase is coming through. Now for the fun part. The pus of man, the primordial abyss taking root. Would that not be the primordial crucible, taking on aspects of man's original form? Though, let's be real, the pus exceeds the strength of man or beast. Dragons, though? That may do it justice. So we move on to the next stage, gathering incantations to materialize this bestial form. Slay some dragons and we get Dragonmaw and Dragon Claw. The former serves as the pus's powerful bite, the latter put a big stupid grin on my face cause the animation is like identical to the DS3 attack. Next up is the long-range tail sweep. Any Elden Ring player should know exactly what to use. Finally, there's the phase transition Claw Drag, a spell which was ultimately quite weak, but at least provided a unique early game side quest. A fascinating characteristic of this LARP challenge, most builds will explore obscure areas of the game's massive map, looking for legal gear. Can't say I've ever felt the need to round up Deathroot, at least not since I learned one's location is in a hero's grave. Those shits are way too tedious, I can't be bothered to solve them, nor look up the solution. Thus, Gerank's bestial incantations rarely cross my mind, but I see application here. So, Gundyr went on an early game side quest, routing Deathroot to get Beast Claw. while I do need several for the spell, way more than it's frankly worth, I can get all I need from early game encounters. Bosses are weak enough to experiment on, yet at this early stage, formidable. By getting equipment ASAP, something like a mid-game Tibia Mariner puts up a fight. Neat. The Black Knife Catacomb Cemetery Shade as well. A good opportunity to test Crucible Tail's utility. In theory, I could sweep the skeletons and knock down the boss. In reality, I get headshot by a sniper whose defenses shrug off my limp halberd. I should state, halberds, in exchange for above average range, utility, and speed, trade off damage. Playing out of sequence, however slight, makes the class pretty impotent. I'm left reliant on my spells, and in such circumstances, their shortcomings appear. The tail doesn't fully loop around, nor is it as fast as it seems versus the jailed Crucible Knight. Against him, the attack is an overwhelming pressure tool. For the player, the wide frontal arc is only nice in the niche position where a spread out group lands in the peripheral dead zones not covered by Dragonclaw. And that's only if you can get the startup animation without getting tagged by any of that group's multiple targets. Though, say you get the spell off, yes you have solid poise, but all that incoming damage leaves you in a bind. I thought Crucible Tail would be a slam dunk for this boss. Turns out, it's fairly impractical. Taking a step back, Gundyr's magic kit does offer compelling coverage, each compound complementing one another. Tail is wide but short, Claw narrows in with further reach, then Maw dials into a single target for massive damage. Unfortunately, despite the hoops I contrive to jump through, Gundyr rarely finds situations warranting this flexibility. Runs don't require much mobbing. Bosses are typically single targets, and on the off chance I do run into a potential use case, I still need to accurately assess the situation. Tail might be better here, but I've gone and used Claw, which worked fine enough. Or more likely, I burned all my FP on cheeky Maws. I mean, that often happened because Dragonmaw's high AR presented greater bang for buck, but it's a little disappointing regardless that my specialized tools seldom saw use. Elden Ring's balance could be an easy scapegoat, but every Souls game sees its few select dominant spells and a litany of gimmicky fluff. This entry's scope merely exacerbates this phenomenon. Though it probably only feels prevalent with Gundyr because I've legalized several powerful options. Beast Claw was not one of those. Actually, that incantation is in the running for my worst attack. Weak single projectile damage makes ranged unrewarding. That's if they don't dissipate prior to reaching your target. Up close, in biting range, the wind-up, like Tail, is swiftly interrupted. I think you're starting to see the issue. Yeah, best laid plans. Turns out early game Gundyr can't really calm Gurranq down, so I had to come back later to get the spell. What can I say? 300 hours isn't enough time to melee no-hit this nimble opponent. Not in this cramped space. Door Cheese didn't help either. I couldn't reach him. Guess I'll come back later when I can survive a hit. Really, levels are what I need right now. All the random garbage in my kit has high requirements for this stage of the game. You know what that means. Double roll into jump attack loop versus Dragon Barrow Putrid Avatar's Putrid Butt Slam. Free 100k souls. With it, I could actually start progression proper. A ceremonial Margit, one-sided owing to my high rune level, same goes for Godric. The run can be divided into 3 sections: initial build setup, Dragonmaw spam, and Impaling Thrust spam. We've entered the second stage, me clumsily tanking, taking a bite out of the demigods. Hissing away resources every fight, the spell's humongous damage netted a win before my flash-in-the-pan offense could burn out. Though it did take some time before bosses could put me on the ropes, even at the 20 vigor breakpoint. Godric's phase 2 grab couldn't outpace my regen physic. It was around this time that I went back to Gurranq, Opaline Bubble Tear in hand, and got my other claw. Afterward, it saw probably the only beneficial instance of the spell all run. At mid-range, it picked off Rennala, who hung on by a thread. She had summoned wolves again, a potentially problematic meat shield, eating my projectiles, but Beast Claw's quantity mowed her and her spirits down. Outside of some style points, my hard-earned incantation never reached the same heights. Why? Dragonmaw. Oh, yeah, novel byproduct of my arbitrary level gating, after each vigor breakpoint lies a period of market difficulty. I need to clear out the early game to unlock higher health, but I'm unable to use those accrued runes to now level up, meaning I have to find a mid-game threat to pick off in order to get back on an even playing field. For Gundyr, it resulted in me getting stuck on Tower Godskin and Grail. Observe the consequence of using that Putrid Tree's runes early. I'm sure there's a convenient larval tier on the surface I could respec with, but Elden Ring is massive, I don't know where it'd be. And I sure as shit ain't gonna fight Radahn 1, one of the worst bosses in the game, fight me, with such a handicap. Dragons should be a free kill, however Jank robbed me of my victory repeatedly. At any moment, Grail can skew, leading to his Midir carpet bomb to cover the entire bridge. Really wish my jump attack was vertical, could you use that guaranteed high stance damage right about now. Health in tow and through low commitment punches, I rematched Apostle and won. His polearm was far more agile than mine, being able to whittle him down, exploiting tiny windows using my light sidearm helped loads. As did Impaling Thrust. God damn! Whew, that's beautiful. Hanging just beyond his reach, charging the thrust as his attack concludes, the lunging poke closing the distance. Look at that damage. Look at those staggers. Elden Ring's got all these kooky gizmos to battle with, but nothing beats the sheer value of Impaling Thrust. Okay, as you'll see with Vort next time, having niche utility can be integral to victory. Merely being a one-note 1v1 powerhouse ain't everything. It's just ideal like 95% of the time. In that near-universal situation, Impaling Thrust has got to be one of the strongest tools to have at your disposal. Fun too. Rare for the typically stilted cheese tactics, there's strategic depth to this simple technique. We'll see that in the final stretch. For now, Dragonmaw, Dragonmaw, Dragonmaw. To be fair, saving my FP to erase Radahn's second phase was strategic. I soften him up so that he's easier to chew when I eat him. Gundyr's halberd proficiency will go on to shine against DLC threats, but looking at the full picture, I think the Puss of Man was the true MVP of this run. I mean, it did handily beat Gundyr during the Mimic Tier mirror match. Using my cunning wit, I walked in with the fist out, preventing his Dragonmaw. Not that the win arose from my intelligent play, rather it was thanks to my opponent's stupidity. He really wanted to buff with Cragblade. I wasn't even using the dubiously legal skill by this point. It was only on the fist for convenient heavy infusion. But in a twist of fate, I continued to benefit from Cragblade through numerous free bites. Though who are we kidding? Free or not, I will spam Dragonmaw regardless. I'll bite again and again, to my detriment. I need to stop challenging Godskin Noble's Rykard lunge and press. The amount of times that's killed me is unacceptable. Satisfying to dodge though, successfully escaping a lethal bind I find myself in. Speaking of Rykard, god what an awful transition, I do need to clear Volcano Manor sooner rather than later, much to my chagrin. Rykard is purposefully excluded from my progression gates by virtue of being an Ancient Wyvern level gimmick boss. He doesn't yield the respect of Balanced Souls combat, but no matter my beliefs, he blocks off my final helmet. Whether I want to or not, I should kill him prior to the endgame. At the time of Gundyr's run, I had not, like many bosses, become proficient with Rykard's kit. Especially relevant given how nigh unplayable Phase 2 is if you don't know what you're doing. There's merit in cleaning up the mid-game, sopping up runes to fill out both offense and defense. You'd think Crucible Tail would be great for Via Simps, it didn't connect once. Beast Claw needs to be charged to do any damage, maybe I should have run Claw Mark over Dragon Communion, Bestial Incants needed to boost more. Though then I couldn't squish ants with such proficiency, so I don't know. Oh, by the way, seals aren't regulated by my duplicate clause, there aren't enough unique ones for every build. There are for staves though, so expect some odd choices in the future. Back to Fias, NPCs could be a ball ache due to shields, but Impaling Thrust is simply a renamed shield splitter. It breaks guard by design, which is seen when I catch the champion frame 1 after dropping his guard for full damage. Twice. I'll take it, saves FP to waste on Lionel, leaving me to finish the duelist with a gamer backstep thrust. Would have been slick had he not done a move which any attack could have punished. Didn't get a chance to show off my unconventional gear against this unconventional boss, guess we're back to Dragonmaw spam. Chomp Estelle, chomp Morgott, failed to chomp Gargoyles and ended up waffling during the lengthy 2-on-1. Glad I got the Bolus Bell, failing RP and forcing a reset would be painful here. Of course, they'd make one of the most resilient bosses, an enemy who barely functions in this lock-on system, a 2-on-1. Strike weapons get a rare W in this matchup, already wimpy halberds though, shit's arduous. I love getting deep into a fight, then having lock-on put me through the spin cycle cause my R1, which probably still missed at that range, stepped me too far underneath. Their lock-on point, being 4 stories off the ground so you can actually fit their design in frame, ends up directly above the player, so the engine reorients your character, sending your next action off into a hitbox. I don't know what to bitch about. Lack of foresight in Gargoyle's design, choosing to make their attacks terribly involved, flailing their spindly model, moving the camera even more. My own choices, dodging in as opposed to strafing around outside their legs. From ought to decouple the player from the lock-on point in their next main release. Sure, it raises combat skill floor and basically requires a claw grip, but damn it, this shit's unplayable at a high level. I can't fluidly maneuver while orientation is leashed to a jittering dot. Free aiming works on some enemies, so long as they aren't too mobile to keep on screen using manual camera movement. Or just add a sizable dead zone to the point. Make the target have to shift significantly before the point budges. Yeah, you've heard it a million times, people whining about gargoyles and FromSoft camera. But come on, the issues got real out of hand with certain bosses in Elden Ring. Ah well, my premature lap through Mountaintop provided enough healing to tank through. Let's be positive. Talk about an actually cool gameplay interaction. Rot Lake. I'm sure at least one of you thought about it when I alluded to that obstacle when introducing emulated boss immunities. How does one traverse it without proccing rock? Lots of boluses, and a bit of meat. 3 horn charms exist increasing poison resist. 2 are effectively unattainable, as enemies immersed in poison drop them. Base talismans will have to do, no choice. Better gather as many sacramental bloods as I can get my hands on, no idea how many heals I'll need over the course of a run. Owing to this, each lake on Boss LARP's maiden voyage was very scary, slightly pants-shitting, as the fate of the series was on the line. Turns out, the margin of error is lenient. It'll be a quirky distraction, it'll require farming Crystal Cave moss, but it's non-threatening. Anyway, Dragonmaw a dragon, throw Elimer, get thrown by Elimer, and smack him on the head, business as usual. Cry about jank bosses again versus Falling Star Beast, wallbang Godskin Noble, oh god, it's time for Rykard. Phase 1 is actually fleshed out, multiple playstyles are valid. The ground quake is undodgeable, but he only does that if you're far away, which is only the case at the very start of an attempt. His poison spit is also scuffed, similar to gargoyles. The particle effect is hard to make out. As far as I can tell, he lobs 3 projectiles which smoke. What I can't tell is if the pattern is set or if spray is random. Sure, it feels like it is. Strafing up diagonal works some of the time, yet you frequently get clipped. Should he spam the attack, it may force a reset from a poison proc. Other than those 2, the fight functions well, presenting a neat Yorm-esque battle in how you wait for squishy limbs to fall within reach, and how excruciatingly long it takes. Phase 2 is nonsensical fluff. Had it been thoughtfully constructed like Phase 1, I'd be singing a different tune, praising Rykard as I do DS3's unremarkable gimmicks. Instead, I compare it to Wyvern. His ephemeral hitboxes behave similarly. Your weapon passes harmlessly through his model. I don't know how to counter his attacks since I don't know what I can attack. Part of the reason being my animations get interrupted by lava ticks. FromSoft was certainly trolling with this boss. I didn't see a point wrestling this snake in sequence. Learning on a level playing field wasn't worth it. Not when my halberd chips him down so slowly. Off to Haligtree to increase stats and for a fair fight. Crucible Tail sucks for Nile, in case you're curious. Back to Dragonmaw Impaling Thrust spam. Other spells had been good for O'Neill, fought him in sequence, my progression gating proved effective in maintaining challenge. The tail swept up his second wave of adds who are tankier. Now though, during late game, low damage discourages use. Power creep left most my kit behind, or maybe I just needed to actually level Faith, or rather Arcane since that's what my seal scales with. Gonna be a bit before I figure that out. I don't respect till the DLC. Dragonmaw's damage had to fall off to get me to notice. Took out Moog 1 next as I chewed through the Smithing 7 breakpoint. I didn't like my odds versus Fire Giant due to halberd damage. Omen Trio would have benefited from scaled Dragonmaw, still killed him easily. Same can be said for Moog, thanks to his poor internet connection. The attacks that did get through dealt little. Love me some Crab and Ritual Shield, though much of my bulk comes from Banarl's armor. Again, Gundyr is meant to weather the ages. He can take a beating, prisoner chain be damned. Speaking of talismans, 1 slot down, others were filled mostly with relevant Drake shields and skill-boosting effects. I flirted with filigree to enable greater impaling spam, but the skill is already dirt cheap, and I can achieve a comparable effect through Alexander's Shard. I don't need extra pokes if it takes fewer pokes to kill. Though, more numerous pokes would mean greater stance damage, yet I think it'd be overkill as you'll soon see. we edge ever closer to Gundyr's final stage. First I got a bite at Fire Giant's ankles. He didn't like that, pushed me off the edge. Attempts would go quicker if my jump attack was vertical, I'm still mad. Horizontal swipes are prone to catching other limbs prior, meanwhile high reach better tags his open wound. Halberds are meant to feel cumbersome, especially one-handed, free aiming ain't smooth. I can appreciate having a weak main weapon though, it encourages exploring my build. De-emphasizes R1 spam. Iudex Gundyr functions as a mixed fighter, using spells, skills, and melee evenly. An admitted handicap, but a novel playstyle. Provides further consideration to each window. I weigh the perks of several options, the choice proving tough as basic melee isn't as universally safe or efficient. Has that level-headed observation balanced the scales? If not, I'ma still moan anyway. My damage output sucks. Fire Giant never ends. Unlike magic stats, I have been pumping physical, boosting my optimal Keen infusion I switched to. Dex is further favored. Dragonmaw spam becomes better with fast cast speed. Also, Gundyr can't two-hand, removing 50% strength boost from the equation. 40 points doesn't provide decent damage output from the Pestclave, so I'm left chipping down bosses. At least I can reprise Radon 1's strat, save FP to secure a kill. Tail sucks versus a Liturgical Black Knife. Great. However, Dragonclaw is pretty sweet. Big AoE clips it, trapping it in the spell's knockdown follow-up. Damage is passable, again low arcane coming to bite me. I lost track repeatedly, spent forever tentatively searching, only to get grabbed, forcing a retreat. And before all the comments swarm in telling me about the sentry torch. I know it exists! Gundyr doesn't use a torch! Don't delete your comment though, it's good for the algorithm, as is views on my 7-hour DS3 vid. Just as people will always inform me of the torch, I will always shill weapon percent. There is consistency in this world. Consistent like greedy bites. Loretta couldn't prevent her mauling. I could prevent rot though. A second rot leg gave me a proper fright that I'd forgotten about, but the sliver of meat I picked up by chance in Elf Hell eased my fears. I beat Melania, used her souls to level up, powering up for Rykard. Maxing out my gear did that too, and for that I needed to kill the Godskins. Stamina was an issue, hadn't been thus far because of those early endurance levels. Pressure from 2 aggressive bosses keeps you moving, no time to catch your breath. Plus I gotta spam big moves to get this down to a 1v1. Luckily I got a favorable seed. The group boss spaced themselves so that I could feasibly approach. Impaling Thrust milked those openings dry, huge counter damage gleaned since poise protected me. Unwise to burn HP, though if the stars align, like they did this run, Godskins don't drag on too long. Hell, even the Broken Pillar strat worked. Elden Ring handed me the W on a silver platter. I'll graciously accept the handout, got my bell bearing, easy plus 25. In a much better position to learn Rykard now. The major point of study will be where do I position myself? Not just to make contact with his elusive hitbox, but also to evade his combos. Plus you gotta keep eyes on the dude, need to pick up on his slight tells, specifically one denoting a strike which can be avoided via spacing. And it has to be a spot I can quickly return to if I get pushed off. Cue the guess-in check, intermittently broken up by Blasphemous Blade Rancor Rain. Running far back does the trick, his melee covers surprising. Okay, I've had my fun, I'll talk about Melania for real. Gotta shake off the rust first, but Impaling Thrust is getting good damage. A little too committal to challenge neutral with the end lag. Really wishing I had a thrusting halberd right about now. Cumbersome chops make winning neutral awkward, a key factor in how well you perform in this fight. Passive Phase 1 requires you to take the initiative. Finding the part of your kit which causes a sufficient stagger animation, Punch doesn't, is crucial to steady DPS. Range allowed running attacks, my singular non-skill poke, to interrupt before she gains hyper armor, yet preempting a run is in itself quite committal. With enough skills and R2 slipped in during her lengthy recovery, I got to Phase 2. Frequently panic-inducing, her newfound aggression keeps the volley going, overcoming Phase 1's failing, but it means disadvantage is harder to surmount. I don't have nearly as much experience or comfort against the Goddess of Rot. You spend exponentially more time in Phase 1. Botched approaches swell her already beefy health pool, attempts drag on. Insert complaint regarding halberd damage. After about a year and a half, you get deep into Phase 2, giggity, and get murked by a point-blank clone attack. Of her big attacks, Aeonia is free, runs straight past. She starts with it every time, plenty of chance to figure it out, but be mindful that her hitbox still extends straight to the ground, you can run into it. Waterfowl is virtually identical to Blade of Nicola, nothing new to learn really. The clones though, she does it rarely enough and Elden Ring playthroughs take forever. Every time I fight Malenia, all knowledge of that attack has escaped me. I just end up improvising, me no likey clones. That first death had me checking my inventory, observing how close I was to another flask. Considering my weak phase 1 game, how that pads out runtime, I figured more health would do me good. I grabbed a seed from the Stormveil tree spirit. Died once more, point blank waterfowl, many such cases. Third time was indeed the charm though. Impaling Thrust made for stronger phase 2 counterplay. Most her moves have the aforementioned longer recovery. Plus the skill's ability to close distance and strike simultaneously produces integral instant punishes. Can't spam all willy-nilly, these beanpole dames screw with your tracking. Your character is unlikely to course correct enough if you're turned around. Also be mindful of the frequently irritating bug wherein she can't enter phase 2 during a riposte stagger. Crits were helpful regardless, and numerous. A happy accident, but impaling stance damage kept her on her knees. Should've run Dagger Talisman, had to go past anyway for the Seedbed Curse. The winning run was sketchy, glad I got that flask. Trades wore down reserves, putting me in an awkward spot with Malenia still quite healthy. Her waterfowl earlier was soon followed by an Ionia, which I reacted poorly to, running away. All is well, I simply perfectly executed the blind roll, after which she did her actual scariest attack, cutting it even closer. Of all things, my weapon's wide sweep caught her escape. Paired with my final thrust, we came to a gratifying climax. Okay, I'll stop with the innuendo. Why do all my Malenia wins have to be so narrow? It's always gotta be so close. I'm close right now, for real. No, I'm serious, I'll stop. In conclusion, Malenia balanced out. Phase 1 was rough. Phase 2 was easy, using Impaling Thrust. Overall, a mediocre performance from Iudex Gundyr. Been long enough to test Rykard? Cool, let's see what we got. As it turns out, that front-facing gash is relatively consistent to strike, and staying off to the left causes most swipes to pass overhead. Only 3 attacks can hit you: Rancor, this follow-up slam into a drag, comfortably rolled through, and his sleeping splash. In Phase 1, the latter is avoided by dodging at the sound cue. Here, you can sight read the lava spray, it's more lenient. Unless he jumps forward, then you have to time around the body contact. It's scuffed, but doable. Halfway down, he reintroduces snake bites, charging forward. Favoring these moves, Rykard repeats them ad nauseum, yet they pose no risk to a player positioned point blank. Once you get him below half, you literally just spam R1. This fight is hot garbage. I'll take it though, I no longer mind fighting him in sequence. Phase 3 is free. Oh, but some complications can arise. Snake attacks move him, and by extension you, forward. You will get pinned against the wall, and things get very wonky. The jump attack becomes dangerous as you rub up against myriad collision. Moving is genuinely difficult. Still, if you made it this far, Rykard without the Serpent Hunter should be done and dusted. Minimal resistance. Which sums up Tanith's simp pretty well too. Staggering a Crucible Knight reads as Apocrypha. No matter, I have my mask. Holy, what a beak. It would appear your character model is rendered beneath the helm. Super cool, you can see the festering pus within. That said, in pursuit of those serpentine features, I swelled the brow, bulging out this mask. Whoops. It still looks good from a lot of angles, maybe not from behind. Not too pleased with how the coif, I guess that's what it is, suspends off my shoulders. It's neat that the gold matches my armor's trim, but that weird physics interaction throws it off. I'd grown accustomed to the Great Helm look, so it took time to warm up to my mask. In the end, I think I do prefer it over the helm. It better resembles Gundyr's armor. Fashion in tow, it's about time for DLC. Moog 2, second verse same as the first, except now I'm more proficient in Impaling Thrust spam. In covering Malenia, I describe the scope of that method of attack. Subsequent fights implementing it won't go into further detail. Assume many similar characteristics surfaced if I don't say so explicitly. Of note here, I did Gundyr's actual Impaling Thrust. He precedes it with a punch, redirecting his follow-through momentum into the charge. Lore-accurate execution, though I'll admit my reasoning for doing so was just to buffer his sneaky third swing. Cool nonetheless. You know, spending all these hours working at Elden Ring, accruing experience but not translating it into complete material, it kinda felt unfulfilling. Now that I'm writing these videos, I can finally apply my work. It's all coming together. Fighting Moog 2, he's an okay super boss, I guess worth the time investment to reach. Writing about him, I'm actually rather charmed. Same is true for the rest of the game's rogues gallery. I finally started feeling good about Elden Ring during Iudex Gundyr, 330 hours into my tenure, and here I finally feel like I'm having fun with the game. Its meta experience on offer pays off in moments like these. The experience is more than just the game itself. Appeal lies in working with the material on a broader scale. Does this mean I finally come around on Elden Ring? Do I buy the hype? Nah, I recall those hundreds of hours spent learning. Wasn't fun. Certainly a variable barrier to entry, but I'd say I've crested that hill. The game got good 350 hours in. Just gotta stick with it, I guess. Off to the land of Skidoo. Just a bit of exploration and early mesmer. Don't want to outpace the final main game gauntlet. No need to cover this in excruciating detail. I picked up Scat and touched Grace. Fought Rilana. She's rough with middleweights, punishing my recovery. Same goes for mid-rolling. Extra distance would help clear her combos. Her slight range advantage put a damper on my halberd's offense. Impaling Thrust didn't bring me close enough to hit on its own. Thus I had to take time positioning, paired with my weapon's speed. Most interactions ended in a trade. Burned all my flasks, yet she still had a third left. I locked in, thrusting intelligently, skill honed over the course of our scrappy bout, and clutched an absurdly tight win. No idea how I survived her Moon and Fire stance point blank. Hey, I'll take the second try victory. Looking back, I should have punched more. I relied too heavily on my outmatched halberd. Dancing Lion was Dancing Lion. Despite how it looks, I was getting fairly lucky. Again, I see myself over-reliant on Impaling Thrust when the less committal running R1, whose range tagged him before his animations could start up, can lay on damage more regularly. The unboosted Dragonmaws were a waste. Worked better on Scat Avatar. Hippo mirrored Rilana, going tit for tat. I continued my DLC trip, getting carried away, ended up basically clearing half of it. Nowadays, I just poke my head in for an early mesmer during the first Skidoo breakpoint. For Gundyr's run, however, I fought him in sequence. In line with the rest of this stretch, I spent Phase 1 derusting, ironing out my melee technique, and abused skills to mop up the latter half of the fight. Impaling Thrust was a great counter to his drill dash spacer. Hits before he can start up, it's safe. I believe since I spent most of this run spamming single attacks, my dueling as Gundyr never got good. Dragonmaw having fallen off, and Impaling Thrust, though mostly carrying, I found myself learning to fight regularly deep into the game. Performance was ugly, but I'm beginning to figure out how to best attack, mixing in my various standard options. Those advancements will be seen when we return to the DLC. For now, I gotta finish the main game. Placidusex will not showcase dueling. His second highest stance crumbled before my brainless thrusts. All this talk of damage falling off, look at Garank, he's toothless now. Endgame bulk leaves each interaction unscathed. Poke, 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 and Dragonmaw for style. I feel bad watching back old Malekith fights. I suck at that phase now. I forgot all the timings somehow. Of course, Iudex Gundyr has the bonus of Impaling Thrust's lunge closing distance for free, guaranteeing a hit. Phase 2 didn't last long enough to go south with my steady DPS. Finally boosted Bites chewed up Gideon, though him cancelling Aeonia nearly produced a reset. The particle effect disappeared before the hitbox, almost procced Rot. Refer to what I said regarding Malekith here for Godfrey. Add a layer of indifference as I banally cycle through my skills to send him into Phase 2, unthreatened. Still not exploring my kit outside of stylish finishers, which only brought me into mild danger. Can't imagine that'll remain true for Radagon. Iudex Gundyr is my fourth completed run of Elden Ring. Ichi did Radon 2 first, he was overleveled. Ricky got lucky, bursting him down on the winning attempt. Grimace also traded frequently. How did Gundyr do? No improvement. Damage intake is climbing, starting to feel the prisoner chain debuff diminishing tanking prowess. Lost all flasks going into Elden Beast, twice. The second time I won though. Like Dragon Lord, his ring was brought down by Impaling Thrust, the lengthy stun allowing numerous punches prior to a riposte. Didn't take much else to polish off its remaining health. The halberd's reach struck multiple times. Again, we see the benefit of circumventing spacing. I swing twice and both connect. Gonna hold off on defiling the Golden Order, don't want to accidentally send myself into New Game Plus without finishing Skadu of the Erd Tree. Meaning it's time for your Putrescent without holy damage. Kill me. Delaying the inevitable, I challenged Ancient Dragonman to fully unlock all DLC paths. It's here I finally realized I needed to allocate Arcane. Look at the damage increase. We're back in business, baby! Actually, I respect following Hippo. I misremembered and thought I did so now. I'm not revising the script. Sunk cost fallacy. I digress. Running this spell has nailed its exact timings in. This boss stood no chance. Fine, I'll do Knight. I am figuring it out. Roll hard left for the 2-hit combo, wait for the second slam, attack early to counter the double charge. Stupid boomerang follow-up is frustrating, but next attempt I got the tidy W. Remember Dragonclaw? Remember how I have these other tools in my arsenal besides Impaling Thrust? Jory does. They're useful in clearing his ads. Weaving through gravestones to shake the spirits, our chaotic brawl saw Gundyr eke out the victor. On repeat playthroughs, I'm growing weary of Abyssal Woods, a 20-minute intermission boiling down to running in a straight line. The path to Midra curbs my enjoyment of his duel. Fascinating design, guy basically is forever an advantage, trade-off being he's not particularly lethal up close. It's simply that you'll never get a chance to breathe, he's endlessly moving. If madness accrues, things get tense. A proc translates to a reset, so does being comboed by his overpowered range kit. High stance damage secured the second try victory. Midra dies so easily to know if the detour is worth it. Bale I like, warts and all. Midir is still the best overall dragon. Strictly gameplay speaking though, the Dread reigns supreme. Usually I play locked off, but as Gundyr, primarily spamming a thrust, I felt magnetized attacks could help. Evasion suffered as I desperately dodged, leashed to his head. Historically, my main failing versus Bale is an inability to hit him, and as you'll observe, I cleared most of the match maintaining high Estus. That's until Lock-On trapped me under his head, I got distracted explaining what just happened, and finally got my comeuppance. Gundyr had so many close wins, not this time. Bale was the one to hang on with the sliver. Attempt 2 saw me again burn all my Estus at once, yet I prevailed. What did it get me? A fight with Midir, my least favorite boss. Yes, Rykard, Radahn 1, and Gargoyles have worse design, they're lower in quality. I simply personally hate Midir more. Channeling my rage, I bursted her down, easy W. Dragon Claw saw use killing her spawn, yay. Dragonmaw finished Romina. Not before 2 deaths, or rather 1 death and 1 reset. It happened, I failed RP, she landed a grab inflicting rot. Little was lost, it occurred early on an attempt, as I recalled how to dodge her bizarre frame. Chosen weapon of Romina's spawn, my Pest Glaive standard moveset proved superior to Impaling Thrust spam. In a dramatic turn, jumping heavies were great. A high horizontal sweep is perfect for hitting her torso. Rolling swipes weren't bad either. A nice bit of variety at the tail end of Gundyr's playthrough. Dragonmaw couldn't quite swallow Dane. Instead, in its final appearance, Dragon Claw has one final hurrah. Am I crazy or did the underdog dragon incant steal second place in usage during the endgame? That's cool. I mean, it wasn't necessary once I picked off Dane. As stated like 40 minutes ago, each spell serves a different purpose, covering specific scenarios. 1v1, biting dominates. Oh well, variety was fun while it lasted. I'll take solace in a smooth let-up. By the way, not relevant here since I assassinated Hornsent, but this encounter sees an exception to the unspoken no summoning rule. If I screw up and the battle becomes a 3-on-1, for the sake of brevity, I'm allowed to form my own militia. No one wants to see me running away from NPCs for an hour. They want to see Consort Radahn. Too bad, you won't. Motherfucker couldn't even beat the first boss. Nearly through, I'd been somehow nailing his delayed swing every time unbuffered, my light sidearm going underutilized. To be fair, Iudex Gundyr rarely punches, but still. Impaling Thrust spam plowed right on through the God and the Lord. He is weak to pierce, the results aren't surprising. Regardless of the skill sheer advantage, a first try victory is crazy. I suppose I'll let the run play out as I conclude. Iudex Gundyr performed admirably. His modest main weapon encouraged a mixed approach to combat, unfortunately marred by 2 dominant attacks hogging all the spotlight. Weak, cumbersome halberd swings took time to master, yet eventually wove into satisfying duels. However, dueling normally seldom won out over Impaling Thrust spam, and Dragonmaw drastically shortened encounters, to a length where his bulk could mindlessly tank through. With no point of comparison, I'll place him in Upper B, a generally average yet varied kit, whose lethality and thereby efficacy greatly increase thanks to Impaling Thrust. Judging results alone, Iudex Gundyr earns A tier, but I'm compelled to detract points as that skill's overbearing presence is fairly reductive. Gameplay becomes shallow when all I'm doing is matching L2. So ends our run, assessed and adjudicated. What was Gundyr's conclusion though? Fell cursed, naturally. He's in no condition to fulfill his original duty. The pus of man is unleashed, the abyss retaking control. The world returns to its original state, before fire, before gold. But wait, there's more. Why stop at Elden Ring? We're emulating DS3. Let's play that too. Problem is, I don't want to mod in Gundyr's gear, thus I made the very practical decision to do SL1, sending me into New Game Plus with items in tow, and a clean slate. Want to know how that resource gathering went? Check out my previous video. As for New Game Plus Gundyr run, bro, writing took way longer than expected. I'm burning out. Gonna close it out quick. I'm satisfied by my choice. Early game value was retained. These first slew of bosses are genuinely rough wielding an unupgraded weapon. Halberds are already limp, now they're even weaker. Minimum stats means I'm stuck fat rolling till fair and keep, where I grab Havels. Vort was a nightmare. Only through careful positioning could I avoid his charging.
Dead center of the arena, I have enough time to clear using that gimped roll distance. Point blank, there's no time to react. Beyond that, fights drag on as I'm walled by New Game Plus health pools, alleviated slightly by Champion's Charge flattening groups. Deacons put up stiff resistance regardless. I'd recommend New Game Plus Fresh Start. It'll change your perspective on DS3's beginning hours. Past the mid-game, once I upgraded the halberd, things go back to normal. Prisoner chain aside, Gundyr's heavy armor is tanky. That's nice. Long fights were less so. I ended up pretty winded from the opening stretch. Completing the game in one stream as usual left me drained, similar to how I feel now writing and doing the voiceover. This may not be Elden Ring DS3 Boss LARP's final form, like that title. Depends how painful editing will be. Stick around to find out how this journey cracks out. In the meantime, I stream each run right here on YouTube. Can't make it? The daily deluge of shorts will catch you up on what you missed. Don't like either format? Can't blame you. I also prefer scripted videos. In that case, I'll see you next time when Vort gatekeeps the Elden Throne. Or, well, I don't think I'll even start writing that video before my 3-week vacation in July, so I guess when you see me, it'll be as the legendary hero pawn.